Well, I participate as an independent researcher in the technical committee at NEN. I'm invited actually as an expert to join and observe and provide feedback. And I think that working from the inside, not just commenting and maybe criticizing from the outside, but actually being there as part of the committee and contributing concrete feedback is way more impactful than just as I said, commenting and being an outsider.
BSI presents The Standard Show, the podcast that brings you the stories behind the standards with Matthew Childs and Cindy Parakill. Today's episode is on researchers in standards.
Hello and welcome to The Standard Show. My name is Matthew Childs and I am with
Cindy Parakill.
Hey Cindy, how are you?
Trying to go with the flow.
Easy does it now.
Exactly, and you?
Looking to chart unknown waters.
Nice. Sail safely, my friend.
Aye, Skip. Now, the aim of this podcast is to bring you the stories behind the standards. And in this episode, we are looking at the role that researchers play in relation to standards development.
As we have talked about many times before on the podcast, standards are basically everywhere, helping to shape the world around us, making life better for everyone.
Yes, and some of those standards are out there doing their thing by modernising established practices, helping out with that constant and evolutionary improvement in the way things are done and made. But at the same time, there are standards at the other end of the scale, working at the leading edge of emerging technologies, techniques and innovations. You know, the game-changing stuff that changes our lives in radical ways.
Now, in order to do this, standards gain their authority by being developed through a rigorous consultation process, which builds an expert consensus. And this process involves representatives from a wide range of stakeholders, including researchers.
Yes, right across the world, researchers make an enormous contribution to the development of standards, particularly in the areas of new technologies and innovations. And the voice you heard at the top of the episode was one of those, Irene Kamara, who carries out research in an important area in the use of new technologies, namely privacy and data protection. Irene is Assistant Professor in Cybersecurity Governance at the Tilburg Institute for Law, Technology and Society in the Netherlands. And in this episode, Irene is joined by Saharnaz Dilmaghani, currently an AI and data science specialist for PwC, based in Luxembourg.
So last year, Irene and Saharnaz were winners in a couple of different categories of the Standards and Innovation Awards from the European standards bodies CEN and CENELEC. The awards acknowledge and celebrate the important contributions of researchers, innovators, and entrepreneurs to standardization. And later this year, CEN and CENELEC will host the 4th edition of the awards.
Yes, I spoke to Irene and Saharnaz about what it meant to them to win one of those awards, the use of their research in the development of standards, and also how important they believe using academic research is in the making of standards more broadly.
Yes, indeed. Now, as well as hearing from our award-winning researchers, in this episode, we also have the Standards Desk of News, including details of an EU Code of Practice for standards researchers, and the latest of my favourite standard.
Yes, for this particular My Favourite standard, we leave Europe and head across the Atlantic to North America, well, Canada to be precise, to meet Tatiana, Khayrullina.
Tatiana tells us why Canadian standard CSA N293 fire protection for nuclear power plant is so important to her.
Now, a reminder that here on The Standards Show, as well as crisscrossing the globe to meet members of the standards community, we really welcome your feedback. Don't we, Cindy Parakill?
We sure do, Matthew Childs.
Please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts, especially if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Find and follow us on Twitter at Standard Show and on Instagram at The Standard Show. And check out the show notes for all of the ways to get in touch.
Do you want to help make people's lives easier, safer, and more enjoyable? If so, why not become a standards maker with BSI and have your say on the development of standards? Standards affect all of us every day, wherever we go, whatever we do. By defining good practice, they help people, organizations, the economy, and society to do things better. We welcome applicants from all fields, backgrounds, and career stages. Our goal is to have a balance of views around the table. If you want to make a difference and shape the world through standards, start your standards making journey now by visiting bsigroup.com/get involved.
Now, in this first of my 2 conversations with award-winning researchers, I speak to Irene Kamara. A former lawyer, Irene is Assistant Professor in Cybersecurity Governance at the Tilburg Institute for Law, Technology and Society, or TILT, in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands. Her academic interest is in the relationship between what she describes as the triangle of policy, law and standards. She's a standards maker in the area of privacy and data protection and has been involved in the development of a number of standards, such as EN 17529 on data protection and privacy by design, and also ISO IEC 27701 on privacy information security management systems. In October last year, she won the CENELEC Standards and Innovation Award in the Individual Researcher category, after being nominated by NEN, the national standards body for the Netherlands. I started by asking Irene about what it meant to her to win that award.
Well, Matthew, I was actually very honored to receive this award because research in the area of standardization is not really a mainstream field for sure, especially for legal scholars. So sometimes when speaking to more traditional scholars in law, as a PhD researcher, I had to explain and justify the importance of my research. So awards like standards and innovation are a recognition for researchers that are working in the field of standardization. And what I've noticed in the meantime, since I received the award back in October, they can also be a motivation for junior researchers to start working in this area. So as a legal scholar, I find this a very good proof that legal scholarship can be innovative and that can have a direct impact on society. I also really like that my research now can be communicated to standardization bodies. For example, the Swedish standardization body invited me for a presentation for their celebration of 100 years from their establishment. So I had the opportunity to actually speak to the employees of the Swedish standards organization and explain what I do and why I do it in the field of privacy and standardization. And it also had some more concrete impact for my personal development, because now I'm also part of the STER working group of CEN and CENELEC, NEN, so the Dutch standardization body nominated me to be a member of this working group. And now I can look closer at the interconnection between standards, innovation, and education. So overall, I find this a very rewarding moment for my career. And I think it's going to be a motivation to work further in standardization research.
Now, you mentioned there your standardization research, which I want to come back to in a second. But before I ask you about that, now you are a former lawyer turned academic. So why the switch?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, formally, I'm still registered as a lawyer, but it's true that I'm not practicing the past years. And I have to say, well, the switch happened quite naturally. So in 2013, I decided to come to the Netherlands and follow a master program in law and technology at the Tilburg Law School. And actually, this is the same program that I'm now participating as a teacher, not a student anymore. So that's a fun aspect of it. And when I applied to the master program, the plan was to specialize in law and technology, work on intellectual property, data protection, and this kind of issues, and then return back to practice. But I had a nice opportunity after completing my master program to do a traineeship at the European Data Protection Supervisor in Brussels. So I went to Brussels. I lived in the Brussels bubble. And it was a very good time to be in Brussels back then, because this is when the General Data Protection Regulation was at the peak of the legislative process. So there was there were negotiations and a lot of discussion on what this new law is going to be about. Then I had the offer to do legal research at the Free University of Brussels. And this was for a very interesting project. But what was mostly appealing about this is that I had the opportunity to work with one of the top scholars on privacy and data protection worldwide, I would say, that is Professor Paul de Hert. So working next to Paul de Hert really was one of the moments that I said, well, maybe I should stay in academia. So I worked in a project on working on human rights, doing research on interesting aspects of privacy and data protection, and having these intellectual challenges literally every day, and working with colleagues from different academic institutions and data protection authorities was the moment that I said, well, I will stay here. So I did my PhD on the role and limitations of technical standards in the protection of personal data. And I haven't regretted that I am now working as assistant professor, and I stayed in academia, and I don't practice the law anymore. What I find also interesting is that in academia, I have the chance to make an impact early in advance. I can influence what law is going to look like, how it's going to be applied with my writings and my presentations. Whereas in legal practice, as a litigation lawyer, you just mostly fix problems that are already there. So I really have to say that I enjoy this different aspect by being in academia.
Now, you mentioned you're at the Tilburg Institute for Law there, and you're assistant professor in cybersecurity governance. And you describe your research interest as exploring norm making and enforcement in cyberspace, including technical standardization. So can you talk me through that in simple terms?
Yeah, well, that's a bit of a challenge. I have several lines of research, so this is kind of an umbrella statement of what I do and why. So what I look into in my research is how technology influences or challenges the law, but also vice versa, what kind of laws we need to regulate the use and effects of technology. So during my research in the area of fundamental rights, I noticed that norms, so by norms I mean rules on how people or companies or governments behave in cyberspace. So those norms are not set only by law. And when I was studying in my bachelor studies in law school, this is the only input that I had. So, okay, the law is there, it's setting the norms, and everyone has to follow. But in practice, those norms are created by different sources, and standards belong in those norm-making sources. So, for example, standards can nudge towards certain behaviors. So when a company is following the ISO quality management standard, it might expect from its collaborators in the supply chain to do the same. So while this ISO standard is not really mandatory because it's not imposed by law, it does have some effect, some impact in changing the behavior of people. And in terms of enforcement, in a similar manner, I explore how norms and rules can be enforced in cyberspace, let's say in the internet. So this is a way more complex than in the physical world. So how do you make sure that rights of individuals are respected online? Or how do you conduct cyber investigations to collect evidence when information is stored on the cloud? So in data servers that are literally everywhere around the world. And how can law and other instruments like standards help in that respect? So these are different questions that I'm exploring in my research.
And in terms of your standards journey, then you've mentioned standards as an important part of your research. We'd love to know, how and when did it start for you with standards, and where are you now?
Well, I started again during my studies in law and technology in Tilburg in 2013. I followed a lecture from Professor K. Sturman, that was later also one of my PhD supervisors. And he was explaining in simple terms what standards are, how they work, what kind of effects they have. And it was the first time that I had to think of the power and the potential of standards. Until then, I only knew ISO and EN, so the CE marking, and I didn't have a clear idea of the regulation and effects of standards. Later, again in this master program, I wrote a thesis under the supervision of Professor Eleni Costa, also at TILT, at my department. And the topic was about behavioral advertising and online privacy. So one part of the thesis was dedicated to standards and technical specifications, and specifically how standards can help communicate our preferences to receive or not personalized ads and have our data collected when we browse the internet. So while writing the thesis, I also did a short internship at CENELEC in Brussels. And this is when I really managed to get, let's say, an insider's view on how European standardization is organized and works. Later on, I did a traineeship at the European Data Protection Supervisor, and I provided input at the consultation from the European Commission on a standardization request for privacy standards. And this is when I was particularly attracted to the triangle policy, law, and standards. And later on, during my PhD, I focused on this particular topic, on data protection and standardization, and I looked at policy and legislation. So this is pretty much how I got to be interested in standardization. What's my journey until my PhD. And now, as I said, I'm working as assistant professor. I continue the research in the area. And I'm also part of an editorial board of the Journal of Standardization, which is a newly established journal that is hosted by the Technical University of Delft. So I'm trying to convince or invite other researchers to write in the area and to submit their articles in the journal as well. So I'm trying with any possible means and channel to continue the research and motivate others to look into standardization as a research field as well.
I just wonder generally, what you think, how important is this sort of independent academic contribution to standards?
Yeah, so I think academics should be encouraged to participate in the development of technical standards, especially in the areas like privacy or standards that have to do with technology that can have some adverse effects like discrimination or this kind of standards. I think it's very important to have independent academics that are not there to promote the positions of a certain part of the industry, but have a more a different perspective. I think it's very important to have those academics on board as well.
So earlier on, you talked to me about your standards journey and about how it all started for you. But you've obviously you become a standards maker now as well. So what sort of technical committees and standards committees are you involved with?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm currently part of the NEN Technical Committee on Privacy and Cybersecurity. And this is a mirror committee to the very well-known ISO IEC JTC1 subgroup. Subcommittee 27, so information security, cybersecurity, and privacy protection, but also the CENELEC, so the European level, CENELEC JTC 13 on cybersecurity and data protection. And I'm following several ongoing projects, and I provide comments and feedback through the National Committee in the Netherlands.
So in terms of your participation then in the development of the standards, have you got any examples of where you've taken your research and there's been a practical application of that research within the standards development?
Yes, absolutely. There are certain ongoing projects, but also a recently published project on it's a European standard on privacy by design. So the one that responded to the Commission standardization request from 2014. And I studied these standards in my PhD research, and I provided concrete feedback on the different drafts that were put forward to the committee.
Obviously, I can understand from a researcher's perspective, you've talked about that relationship between policy and the law and regulation and standards. And that's a very interesting and sort of fertile ground for you as an independent academic. I just wonder how that sits with you. You're researching in that area, but then you're also becoming a standards maker too.
Well, I participate as an independent researcher and in the technical committee at NEN, and I'm invited actually as an expert to join and observe and provide feedback. And I think that working from the inside, not just commenting and maybe criticizing from the outside, but actually being there as part of the committee and contributing concrete feedback is way more impactful than just as I said, commenting and being an outsider. Yes, because I'm not actually working for the technical committee. I'm not working for NEN. I'm an independent researcher. At academia in the Netherlands, we have the code of integrity that is imposed to every individual researcher working at the universities. And this is actually the rules that we have to respect to make sure that our research is not subject to any conflict of interest. So I think I truly believe that the researchers should be actively participating in public consultations that the European Commission is publishing for making comments on legislative proposals, or contributing with research that is contracted from national governments, like I'm doing a project now for the National Cybersecurity Agency in the Netherlands. So I find this as our contribution to society, because just writing articles that we hope that are going to be read at some point in the future, and that relevant stakeholders are just going to take our recommendations on board, is a more passive approach than actively going out there and communicating your research and making a real impact. From my perspective, I find this a very rewarding journey, and I would encourage researchers to try to be more involved in practice.
Are you a postgraduate studying at a UK university? Do you have a research idea or project that involves standards in some way? Well, if so, BSI Student Research Program can help. The way it works is simple. We gain valuable information about an area of interest to our standards work, while you can benefit from mentorship to support your project and the chance to gain knowledge and exposure that may increase your future employability. To find out more about the program, including case studies of previously supported projects and how to apply, visit bsigroup.com/education.
Now, coming up later, we'll hear my conversation with Saharnaz Dilmaghani, the second of our award-winning researchers we are featuring in this episode. But for now, Cindy, shall we have the Standards Desk of News?
Yep, let's do it. European Code of Practice for Standards Researchers.
To identify elements of good practice in standardisation research projects, the European Commission has published a scoping study for supporting the development of a code of practice for researchers. In the study, the Commission argues for close ties between the research community and the technical committees that develop standards to improve researchers' awareness of and know-how about the standardisation process. The ISO Research Grant.
The 2022 ISO Research Grant is open for applications. This year's theme is International Standards and Climate Action, calling for researchers to investigate how the use of international standards can contribute to the achievement of the climate agenda. If you're a postgraduate student or a postdoctoral researcher, apply at iso.org before 30 June. And finally, have your say on electric vehicle standards.
Comments are invited on the world's first draft standard for accessible charging of electric vehicles. PAS 1899 provides requirements to help improve the experience of disabled people using public charge points and increase public engagement in EV charging. Go to standardsdevelopment.bsigroup.com and have your say. Look sharp though, the public consultation closes soon. And that's the Standards Desk of News.
My favorite standard.
My name is Tatiana Khayrullina, and my favorite standard is CSA N293 Fire Protection for Nuclear Power Plants. I am a consulting partner with Outsell, and I look after the standards and technical solutions market of the information data and analytics industry. I research, analyze, and publish insights about the global standards development market. For example, one of the publications that is of interest to standards developers is our annual report on the global standards publishing market. It comes out in May, and this is where we look at the overall market, we estimate its size, we look at the growth rates, provide a review of their growth rates going forward in the future. We talk about the key players, and we also discuss trends that are driving the market. But before joining Outsell, I was with Canadian Standards Association for almost 12 years. And there I was developing competitive intelligence and market assessments for a variety of departments, supporting them in their work. And when I say variety of departments, I probably work with all of them, starting with standards publishing, and then product, sales, marketing, finance, innovation, testing and certification. So my story is going to be unusual for two reasons. First of all, I'm going to be talking about a Canadian standard, a CSA standard. And the other reason why my story is unusual is that I'm typically on the business side of things. And people like me normally do not get involved in committee work. I, however, got a chance to work with the committee developing the CSA N293 fire protection for nuclear power plants. I worked as a project manager on the 2012 edition of that standard. My assignment was for about 2 years, and just to explain what a project manager at CSA does, it's a CSA employee who organizes committee meetings, who recruits volunteer experts, also supports the committee chairperson in running the meetings, and updates the standard draft with new content as it evolves. So that was my chance to see the mechanics, kind of the kitchen of standards development from a front row seat, learn about the process of building consensus, also get to know the members contributing to the standard, learn about their different roles in the committee, and ultimately understand the unique role that a standards development organization, or an SDO as we call them, plays in industry and the society at large. For example, some of the concepts that all SDOs, all accredited SDOs use a lot are we are a member-driven organization, or it's a consensus standard. These concepts truly come to life when you get immersed with committee work. For example, SDOs refer to their members being the lifeblood of their organization. And what it means in practice is that there are thousands and thousands of volunteers who show up for meetings months after months, sometimes for years on end, sometimes throughout their entire careers. They do their homework, they review drafts, they provide comments, they respond to requests for interpretations, they vote. They're truly committed to publishing their standard on schedule. Members take their committee work really seriously. They're proud to contribute to a document that will benefit their industry and, well, their society, their country. So, because of the caliber of people that I got to collaborate with, my experience was extremely rewarding, despite a quite steep learning curve that assignment also came with. So it was a fun ride. And in short, I feel privileged to have met the members and to have this hands-on experience of developing a consensus standard now under my belt. So this is why I have special affection for CSA N293 fire protection for nuclear power plants, and nominate this standard to be my favorite.
Our thanks to Tatiana for sharing with us her My Favourite Standard. Now, in this second of my conversations with award-winning researchers, I speak to Saharnaz Dilmaghani. Last year, she won the Young Researcher category in the CENELEC Standards and Innovation Awards, after being nominated by ILNAS, the national standards body for Luxembourg, for the subject of her PhD, which was on developing algorithms for clustering network data, such as in social networks. She tells me about both the challenges and the personal satisfaction of providing a research perspective inside a standards technical committee and seeing the practical application of knowledge used in the development of international standards. Saharnaz is currently a consultant in artificial intelligence and data science for the professional services firm PwC. I started by asking her to tell me more about this role.
I started actually my role in PwC when I was like almost wrapping up my PhD. I'm here actually. I'm a technology business unit. I'm working with data team and AI, with different people, with experts and professionals. And so far, it really helped me a lot to improve my skills actually. And the good thing is that I was so surprised that I could use my background and my knowledge to support my work, because like most of the people say that, yeah, it's normally, academy is different than working environment like in business. So you should be really lucky if you can really make those connections. So I was really working hard to make those connections, to see if I can use my networks, if I can use my contributions, and build something on that, which was really for me surprising that most of the projects that I was working were actually, I could use my knowledge. And we had here we do consulting basically, first of all, but then we do different ways of different kind of projects. So we we design solutions, we we do like trainings, etc. So I've been in different projects so far, and then in most of the cases I was able to actually use that network approach, for example, in one project. And then standardization and regulations was also very important, because we also have a global team here who are working on that side. So I connected to them, and it was really good to exchange information. And most importantly, since it is, the world is really now going into these warnings and alarms that what we can do with AI, and what are the threats, etc., what are the risks. So it's becoming a bit of hot topic somehow. It's a topic that most of the business companies are interested in. So that's why we also focus a lot in our routines and our tasks to address this kind of challenges by providing trainings, by giving solutions that is actually to help to support a good AI rather than the bad AI.
Now you mentioned standards there briefly. So we're interested in your standards journey. How and when did it start for you, and where are you now?
Yeah. Well, it is started actually, to be honest. It started when I was doing my internship. There was an internship doing my bachelor, so it was like maybe 7-8 years ago. I was working in my own country, like in Iran. I was just for 3-4 months. I assigned to a task. There was this research center in standardization, and they were doing some tasks. So I was just, as a bachelor student, I was just trying to help. And that was the first actually interaction with the standardization. So of course, it was not too technical for me. And for me, it was like, okay, standards are just maybe for the pipes, and the most related ones were actually related to the communication, the IEEE network standards. That was the most that I knew.
Clarifications Corner. The Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, or IEEE, develops standards in the area of telecommunications, information technology, and the power generation of products and services.
But then, because my background was IT during the time I did my bachelor, so there was another manager who asked for my help during my internship in some IT standards. So there I got familiar with this type of standards, that, oh, okay, there's more than what I was thinking. But during the time, big data was really a buzzy word, and I think there wasn't even a standardization for that. So after I did my master's and then I got this position, PhD position in Luxembourg, I find that, okay, so there's the whole PhD program was not only research, but it was like finding also research gaps in standardization, right? So it was kind of focusing on two sides. Then here, initially, I started with working group 9, big data. So that was maybe my first being, the first time being expert in a standardization committee working group. So there I was actually mostly interested in, seeing like what's going on, what are the challenges, like what these people are talking about, what they really want. So initially it was mostly to observe and also to learn. And then like during the time I participated in workshops, some courses, I took some certificates, and then I've become more mature and mature in standardization.
So, what standards are you currently involved with now?
Well, right now I'm mostly focused on AI, and then like within AI, my main interest is on AI conformity assessment, AI trustworthiness, ethics. These kind of challenges, risks, and threats about AI, and like what are the solutions, what we can propose. So that's why I'm involved in SC42. Well, within SC42, there are different working groups. So I'm in data working group. I'm an expert in data, in in AI trustworthiness, sorry, and then like algorithms and the computational algorithms, use cases, etc. So there are different working groups. But my main focus was actually from the beginning on AI trustworthiness, where I also contributed. I use my research, some pieces of my research there in the technical roadmap, in the technical reports and the AI roadmap that we wrote. So this is in case of ISO and IEC actually, and then in CENELEC, because afterwards they also established this CENELEC focus group AI, which is now converted to JTC 21. It's part of JTC 21.
Your research then has been used in a number of different international standards. Could you tell us about those, and also, how it was used? How did the committee go about using your research in the development of those standards?
Mm-hmm. Well, so I was doing also my research on these topics beside, participating in the meetings and, reading the drafts of the technical reports or the publications of actually the new items, let's say, new items of standardization. So, it was kind of a two-way road. So I was looking into the challenges, and then I was doing some research, and then at the same time, we were looking into, publishing these works, the contributions. So it was kind of looking into the gaps, and then doing research and doing a study to see if there's something, if there is already some solution for that, or if we can if we can develop something or something. So it was kind of this kind of question and finding the answers. But then at the same time, like what I was finding, it was a good. They were also a good match and fit for the new items that were actually going to that was proposed in SC42.
Another clarifications corner. SC42 is the subcommittee on standards for artificial intelligence, which is part of the ISO IEC Joint Technical Committee 1, or JTC1, responsible for all standards in information technology.
So within the e-meetings, and when we received the drafts, I was reading it, and I was looking into the places where I could contribute, and I could, if I already have some pieces of research, where does it fit? So it was kind of looking into the drafts, trying to provide some feedback if we could, and then also to discuss where we can, which part or which papers fits the best to complete that draft. And then like we were like having meeting internally with the team, and then within the e-meetings that were actually held by SC42 committee. We were discussing all these comments. So then, there's this protocol that, okay, everybody discuss it. If if they accept it, they will keep it. Otherwise, they'll edit it. I was using my parts of my research wherever it fits in the roadmaps, AI roadmap that we wrote with CENELEC, and also the technical report of AI trustworthiness, AI trustworthy for SC42. But there's been also other contribution in different committees and different reports as well. So, for example, in SC42, in AI trustworthiness technical report, there was also part of my research where we discuss about the mitigation strategies, especially, for example, when it comes to different threats and risks in bias, like bias is one example, robustness of AI. So these were actually parts of the technical report that I could collaborate and I could contribute in. Notice that, okay, there's a discussion that I should, okay, maybe raise a hand or mention or continue to participate in discussion. So I was actually participating. Other than that, it's mostly like you have the draft, so you read it and then you see if you can contribute on that or not. But we were mostly, doing all these things internally with ILNAS. So at ILNAS, the Luxembourgish standard body, we were having these meetings. We were sitting together, looking into the draft, and then see how how and what we can contribute. And then afterwards, the draft was somehow edited, and then it was sent by the representative of the of the team to the ISO committee, and then there they will just going the round table and then like looking into the comments that were sent.
How did that feel? Well, you've worked on the research for 4 years for your PhD, and your research background generally, and you're interested in this field as an undergraduate. I just wonder how that felt when there was a sort of a practical and concrete application of the research you'd done.
Yeah. Initially when I was like as a bachelor student, I didn't really feel it. Like that was just a short period of time. But now, as a PhD, as a person who did most of her life, I was like doing research and reading papers. Honestly, so. Actually, in the beginning, it was like a little bit of lots of misunderstandings and confusion because you have a different way of thinking, way of looking, and even like defining and writing. And then like people from business, they had like their own concerns, and they were looking into. We were talking about same thing, but maybe with different languages. And I think like this is actually why also in standards are really important, because there we can come to a common language, and then we can share more than just separating those communities and saying that, okay, you are a researcher, you should do research, and you are a business person, so you can participate. So having this mixture of different stakeholders, different languages, it's actually really important. And I should say, it was really challenging for me in the beginning, because I was thinking, no, this is not the right way. This is more important than that. But then you see, oh, okay, he's also right. If you look into the real life and like the business concerns, that's more important than what I was, for example, assuming that's more.
So there must be something really, personal satisfaction where you've done this research over 4 years. Obviously you could produce papers, academic papers, and research. Your PhD sits on the shelf somewhere in your bedroom or at home, but actually you're taking elements of it and you're influencing this international standard. That must be really rewarding.
Indeed, actually, with all the challenges, like the first year, I would say it wasn't really like I didn't have the same feeling that I have now, but because it was like most of the challenge, like a lot of challenges, like how should I fit that? How should I connect that to this? My research was pretty much, not mature enough. So I should have, because like in order to have a PhD, you should have your research contributions and your papers as well. So it's a bit of big challenge to connect all these things and to be present in all these rooms, let's say. So yeah, actually, initially I didn't really understand that it can be so strong. So now, actually, like after I wrapped up my PhD, and especially in the position that I am right now, I see that well, it was really helpful, because it wasn't like, as you said, something that I put it in the shelf, because I met people, I talked with people, there was this kind of um, somehow interdisciplinary, and also networking that you've created, and also different discussions that you've participated. So I think it not only give me that, the typical PhD degree to put it on the wall, but also all those skills that I learned during this way, by participating in standardization, to look into the challenges and real life applications, and how should I, now there is a need, there is a deadline to, for example, for this new item in standardization, how can I put prepare that piece of research that I have and fit it into this document that can, that other can use it. So in a different format, in a standardization format, and it's not really just a research paper that researcher reads. That was actually one of the skills that really helped me a lot to grow in different, to grow different skills, not just looking into the research. Yes, indeed. So I think like there are lots of gaps, and especially like if I talk about like AI and data analytics part. So I think there is a lot of gaps, and there are lots of needs. If you are a researcher, you are dealing with standardization, I would say it's a good opportunity to it's a challenge itself, but it's also interesting, and then you will learn a lot if you can use your research in standardization. And there is now there are lots of needs. The standardization in case of in AI, it's still not mature enough. We need a lot of standardization. We need to use a lot of research references. So I think it's a good opportunity for young researchers if they are interested in the topic, so they can really work on it. And it might be challenging in the beginning, but then you'll learn, and then you will really enjoy it, because then you also get different feedbacks from different perspectives, different people in the different companies and sectors.
Now, you won the Young Researcher category in the CENELEC Standards Innovation Awards in 2021. So I've got to ask you, how did it feel to win?
Well, quite actually, like winning is always interesting, right? So I'm very exciting, and like it was really nice. So I think it really came in a good time, because I was like finishing my PhD, and it's kind of gave me this feeling that, okay, so I was in the right direction. So I was all the efforts and all the time, and all those failures, and okay, you can do it, you should continue, all those kind of the efforts that you've put, it actually came to a good conclusion. So I was really happy about it, and at the end, actually it turned out to be a good thing, because I met a lot of people they invited us to a meeting in Italy, and then we met lots of people. So that was really nice to see how actually these organizations are going. And so it was really interesting for me to be there and to meet a lot of people which are actually behind the scene of standardization, maybe. So it turned out to be a good thing, and I'm so happy about it.
Our thanks to Irene Kamara and Saharnaz Dilmaghani for speaking to us for this episode, and for sharing their thoughts and experiences on the role of research in standardisation. Our thanks also to Tatiana Khayrullina for sharing with us her My Favourite Standard. And of course, our thanks to you for listening. Finally, a reminder that if you want to find out more about accessing BSI support for postgraduate research, then head on over to bsigroup.com/education.
You have been listening to an episode of The Standard Show with Matthew Childs and Cindy Paragill. Subscribe to us now, wherever you get your podcasts.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.